Denethor, steward of Gondor, father of Boromir and Faramir, and apparently the world's most unsettling tomato eater. Even if you forget half of the Return of the King, you'll never forget that scene. Denethor chewing on cherry tomatoes like it's a horror movie, while Pippin sings for his life. Juice dribbling down his chin, the city burning, his son riding towards certain death. It's the tomato herd round the world, and it cemented him as one of the most viscerally disliked characters in all of Middle-earth. But the thing is, Denethor wasn't always a monster. In Tolkien's world, he's actually a brilliant man, a proud steward trying to hold Gondor together while the darkness closes in. The problem is, he knows how hopeless things are. While Theoden of Rohan rallies his riders and finds courage, Denethor looks at the same odds and simply gives up. He refuses to light the beacons. He mocks Gandalf's hope, and in his lowest moment he sends his only remaining son Faramir on what he knows is a suicide mission, just to spite him for not being Boromir. That's really the heart of why fans despise him. He's not just a bad leader, he's a bad father. His open favoritism toward Boromir and his cruelty toward Faramir are almost unbearable to watch. While Boromir's death broke him, it's his inability to love Faramir that defines his downfall. And when he finally decides that death is better than defeat, he nearly drags Faramir with him to the pyre. The books make him more complex, less of a slobbering tyrant, more of a tragic mind broken by the Palantir. Years of staring into that stone and wrestling with Sauron's will left him hollow and paranoid. So when the film turns him into a raving madman with tomato juice on his chin, it hits differently. Exaggerated, but unforgettable. So yes, Denethor is despised for his cruelty, his arrogance, and his despair. A man who could have been great, but instead became a meme. Grima Wormtongue, Middle-earth's original gaslighter. If you ever needed proof that you don't have to be strong, brave, or good-looking to ruin a kingdom, meet Grima Wormtongue. This man is what happens when emotional manipulation decides to grow limbs and a bad haircut. Pale, greasy, and constantly whispering poison in King Theoden's ear, Grima basically turned Rohan's proud king into a depressed puppet. Before Saruman's corruption, Grima was Theoden's trusted advisor. But power does strange things to weak men. Promised wealth in Éowyn's hand by Saruman, yes, Éowyn, who'd rather wrestle an orc barehanded than talk to this man, Grima's mix of greed and delusion drives most of his slimy behavior. He's the classic archetype of the sycophant, flattering, lying, and slithering his way into power. Even Tolkien repeatedly likens him to a snake, the universal mascot for deceit. By the time we meet him in the Two Towers, Rohan is in ruins. Theoden looks like he hasn't had a good meal or a single independent thought in years, and Grima is perched nearby, whispering death like it's an art form. Fans hate him not just because he's a villain, but because he's so good at being pathetic. He doesn't fight with swords or strength, he fights with words and weakness. In Tolkien's books, his corruption is more psychological, subtle poisons of the mind rather than overt treachery. But Peter Jackson's films turn him into something almost visceral. Brad Dourif's performance oozes discomfort, an unnerving presence as critics put it, the kind of man you instinctively want to disinfect your screen after watching. The film even implies he murdered Theodred, Theoden's son, cementing his fall from worm to outright viper. And then comes his end. After years of humiliation under Saruman, who literally shortens his name to just Worm, Grima finally snaps, slitting his master's throat in one last pathetic act of rebellion. In the extended edition, he stabs Saruman in the back. Subtlety never was his strength. It's twisted irony. His single act of violence actually ends Saruman's petty tyranny over the Shire. Evil doing good by accident.
You ought to see me with the 357 Magnum. I'm awesome.
Bill Fernie, the petty traitor of Bree. Some villains aim to conquer kingdoms. Others, like Bill Fernie, are content just to sell out their neighbors for pocket change and a bit of ale. He's proof that you don't need power or dark magic to be hated. Sometimes being a sneering, self-serving rat is enough. Bill Fernie first appears in the Fellowship of the Ring during the Hobbit's stay at the Prancing Pony in Bree. While Aragorn, then Strider, is risking his neck to protect Frodo, Fernie's busy doing the opposite, feeding information straight to the Black Riders. He's one of those characters who doesn't even have the decency to be interestingly evil. He's not a mastermind or a warrior, he's just a small-town gossip with a mean streak and a price tag. Fans dislike Fernie because he embodies cowardice and petty corruption. He's not tragic like Denethor or broken like Wormtongue, he's just gross. He spies on travelers, mocks hobbits for sport, and, in one of his more infamous moments, overcharges them for a half-starved pony after their own are frightened away. That pony, incidentally, turns out to be one of the most wholesome creatures in Middle-earth. Tolkien didn't give us much reason to hate him, but Peter Jackson's adaptation made sure we would. What makes Fernie especially interesting, and worth including, is that he represents Tolkien's theme of small-scale evil. Not every villain wears armor or commands armies. Some, like Fernie, are the ordinary people who enable darkness by looking the other way or profiting from it. He's a man of no consequence who still manages to make the world worse just by being himself. And poetic justice does catch up with him. When the hobbits return home after the War of the Ring, they hear that Fernie was driven out of Bree for siding with Saruman's men. Poor Tauriel. She didn't ask to be born in a writer's room, but that's exactly where her troubles began. Introduced in the Hobbit films as the captain of the Mirkwood Guard, Tauriel is an entirely new creation, not found anywhere in Tolkien's writings. And for many fans, that's the first and last strike. In theory, she should have been an easy win, a skilled warrior elf, capable and compassionate, finally giving the films a major female character. But instead, Tauriel became one of the most divisive additions in Jackson's expanded Middle-earth. Purists immediately bristled at her non-canonical status. To them, she represented Hollywood meddling, a made-up elf wedged into Tolkien's story to add romance where none was needed. That romance, of course, was with Keely the dwarf, and for many fans, that's where the real problem began. Their cross-race flirtation felt forced, tacked on, and completely out of sync with the tone of The Hobbit. While some viewers found it sweet or tragic, others saw it as unnecessary drama that undercut the larger story. In a world already filled with dragons, orcs, and epic battles, elf-dwarf forbidden love felt like a studio note made over a latte. Still, it's worth saying, Tauriel herself isn't a bad character. She's brave, empathetic, and shows a moral independence that even some of her higher-born kin lack. The problem is that she never quite fits, not in Tolkien's lore, and not in the hearts of those who wanted the story to stay closer to the book. So fans don't hate her so much as what she represents, the line between adaptation and invention. Tauriel's existence sparks the same debate every fandom eventually faces. How much creative liberty is too much? In the end, Tauriel isn't despised because she failed as a character, but because she wandered into a world that wasn't quite ready to accept her. Evil's most unpleasant spokesperson. The Mouth of Sauron is one of those characters who makes you instinctively lean back from the screen.
My master, Sauron the Great, bids thee welcome.
He doesn't swing a sword, command armies, or cast spells, but somehow he's still one of the most viscerally unpleasant figures in all of The Lord of the Rings. Introduced in both the book and Peter Jackson's extended edition of The Return of the King, the Mouth of Sauron serves as the Dark Lord's ambassador. A title that sounds impressive until you realize it basically means professional trash talker. His job is to stand before the heroes of Middle-earth and gloat, sneering through cracked lips as he presents proof of Frodo's capture. It's psychological warfare, pure and simple, and he relishes every second of it. In Tolkien's lore, he was once a man of Gondor who gave himself over to Sauron, rising in rank through sheer malice and deceit. By the time we meet him, his true name has been erased, his identity consumed by his master. He's no longer a man at all, just a mouthpiece for evil, literally. And that mouth is half the reason fans remember him. In the film, his grotesque, rotting smile, complete with blackened teeth and wet, twitching lips, was enough to make audiences squirm. Some fans found the design brilliant. Others found it so exaggerated it pulled them out of the scene. It's hard to focus on the tension of the final standoff at the Black Gate when you're distracted by a nightmare dentist commercial. Critically, his biggest flaw isn't just his looks, it's his narrative timing. After all the build-up to the final battle, the Mouth of Sauron appears for a few short minutes, delivers his threats, and promptly loses his head, literally, when Aragorn decides negotiations are over. It's a quick exit for a character who feels like he was meant to do more. So, fans don't hate the Mouth of Sauron because he's too evil. They hate him because he's too weirdly evil. He's unsettling, slimy, and somehow both over the top and underdeveloped. a servant of darkness who, for all his dramatic flair, ends up as little more than a grotesque footnote in the shadow of his master. In short, he talked a big game, right up until his mouth got shut for good. Ted Sandyman, the Shire's smallest tyrant. Ted Sandyman isn't evil in the way Sauron or Saruman are. He's worse because he's believable. The Miller of Hobbiton is a minor character in The Lord of the Rings, but one who perfectly captures a kind of pettiness that fans love to hate. From the very start, Ted is everything the Shire isn't supposed to be. While hobbits like Sam, Frodo, and Merry embody loyalty and courage, Ted is lazy, smug, and cruel. He mocks Sam for believing in elves, calls Frodo foolish for his nonsense, and delights in cutting others down to feel taller. There's no grand ideology, just spite for its own sake. And when Saruman's ruffians come to the Shire, Ted doesn't resist. He helps them. In The Scouring of the Shire, the final chapter of The Lord of the Rings, Tolkien pulls back from the grandeur of Mount Doom to show evil creeping into the most ordinary place of all. The Shire, once green and idyllic, is blackened with smoke and fences. Factories rise where meadows once stood, and Ted Sandyman is there, proud of his part in it. He's the local who sells out his home for scraps of power and a shiny new mill wheel. We learn that he's rebuilt his father's old mill into an ugly, smoke-belching factory, one of the first symbols of industrial ruin in Tolkien's peaceful countryside. Ted sides with the invaders, enforcing their orders and sneering at his own people as they're beaten and starved. When the hobbits return and overthrow Sharky's, Saruman's rule, Ted's quick to turn coward again, blaming others for his own choices. Fans dislike Ted because he represents something painfully ordinary, the person who enables evil not through ambition, but through pettiness. He doesn't seek power, he just likes the feeling of finally being on top, even if it means selling out his own village. He's a reminder that Tolkien's evil isn't always found in dark towers or cursed rings. Sometimes it lives in the mill down the road, in a man too small to see the good in others, but big enough to cause harm. That's it for the characters I wanted to cover in this video. Please like and subscribe to help me create more. Come at me in the comments if you disagree with anything, and let me know who else you would like to see covered. Thanks for watching.